Hi, happy Tuesday. I'm Dave Butler.
I'm Stephen Tager.
Welcome to Revival. This is our podcast about revival. That'll get you listening. We really just
Where do I subscribe?
Yeah, living a life of faith is meaningful and purposeful and exhilarating. There's a lot of things to work out and think about, like living a life, what it looks like to live a life of faith and family and work and all the different places. And we take talks from General Conference to inspire us and find the promises in there and just, I guess, encouragements in there and things to live out. Like, what can I live out to live that life of faith and enjoy the kind of life that Jesus promised, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we do every week. So happy you're here. Let's jump in. Today is Elder Gong's talk. It's called Ministering.
Were you at that? This is random. Were you at that meeting where Elder Gong started eating bread at the pulpit at the tabernacle? It was a seminary meeting.
What?
He was teaching about the bread of life, and he literally started just eating bread at the pulpit. I mean, You're not supposed to have a favorite, but that
won you over.
Just like
that was easy. That was an easy win.
Don't do that in sacrament meeting. If you're not an apostle, you can't do that. That would be so.
Why can't people do it? Well, you might lose friends. Okay, that's why. You have permission, but you might lose friends. Is what you're trying to say. What kind of bread? I'm just kidding.
I bet it was good. I hope I'm not making that up. I'm pretty sure that that's true.
Well, if you are and you dreamt it, it's just intriguing to know that you have dreams of
that happening. Okay.
Church leadership eating bread.
The name of his talk is Ministering.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was a great talk.
I want to say this about the word ministering. I might dig myself into a hole, so I promise I will come back to that.
There's a lot of backstory, a lot of pain. Lay down on the couch, Dave. Talk with the therapist. We have to get all this out. Okay.
Okay, this is what I was most concerned by. Remember when we renamed home teaching and by we, I mean someone else, home teaching and visiting teaching to ministering? Like, there is a vibe about the word home teaching and visiting teaching that kind of has it just has a vibe that's like not, I don't know, it feels programmy sometimes. It feels like, had like that kind of thing to it. And I actually love that word minister. Like, it is one of my favorite words. Like to say Jesus ministered, angels minister. Yeah. It just is like, that word is such a tender word to me. I loved it. And so when it was being renamed, I just remember almost like there was a lead up, President Nelson talking about it. And I legit said to myself, please don't say ministering. Please don't say ministering. Please don't say ministering. And then he was like, ministry. Oh no, I just didn't want the word to become like the name of a program or something like that, And so I wanted to protect that word for what it really is, which I think is what was actually happening, where it was like, okay, this has become so programmy.
And we got to make it better.
We have to rename it because you've lost like the whole essence of what it is meant to be. So let's name it what it actually is, and and then kind of go from there, which we can talk about. But last week we kind of brought this up, and let's start off by this and just saying that whole idea of why do I have to care about other people? Why can't I just escape? Why can't I just go somewhere else? Why can't I just, why? I believe everything that God did Jesus did on the earth, and everything that he invites us to do leads to living a fulfilling type of life. That's what I believe about his words. And he's the one who calls us to care for and love other people. But let's just get into that for a second. Yeah. Like, how come?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, just take Elder Gong's talk. It starts off with all these stories about ministering, about people going outside of themselves to go bless and help and heal other people. And it's such an important point. Like, why would I even do that? Why would I make that a part of my schedule? Right?
Because there's awkwardness with it.
Yeah.
And there's like,
and it's hard and it's
Right.
difficult.
And I have a lot of other stuff going on and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I got to worry about myself and my family and, and that kind of thing. And of course we minister to our family, but you just take the leaders of the church, like Elder Gong, for example. I think he went to Oxford, and he's at the time of life where he could be playing golf and just hanging out with grandbabies and traveling, right? And just having kind of a calm, relaxing life. Instead, he's accepted the call to literally spend his whole life ministering to people all over the world.
And that's what his stories are actually about at the beginning. Now that you're saying that, it's like, he's like, we met so-and-so. We went out of our way to do this.
Right.
And and you're just like,
is that really going to work? Is that a better life than sitting?
And some of them were during COVID, where I met people on Zoom, and I was like, bro, that is religion undefiled. You actually went out of your way to meet people on Zoom. I was so tired of it. I hated it because I don't want to see another person on Zoom ever for all my days. And the fact that I was like, wow.
Right.
He reached out through Zoom. We couldn't reach out in person. Like, I took that as an excuse to be like, well, I canceled appointments. Like, I used the COVID card like all the time for excuses of why I could not meet up with people, I'm a people person.
Sorry. Your ability just to go, Dave, and just like, it's like squirrel. You find something.
That was all about what we were talking about.
Okay. So why should we, and can we get weird and technical and a little nerdy for here for a second?
Always.
Okay. Always have to ask permission. There's one Jewish philosopher. His name is Emmanuel Levinas. He's a really brilliant and influential philosopher of the 20th century. Faithful Jewish man who actually went through the Holocaust, was a survivor of the Holocaust. And he says at the heart of what it means to be human, at the heart of it, like foundational, is to exist with others. And what it means to be human is to see the face and be in the presence of another's who have thoughts and feelings and desires, and to see in other that they count just as much as I count. I'm also drawing on some other thinkers as well, but essentially there's a lot of brilliant people who say in very technical terms this really simple truth that humans are kind of designed to love.
Yeah.
That's what we are. We don't really flourish very well when we're selfish. A fantastic way to ruin your life is just to try to make yourself happy, right?
Yeah.
And so the way we can, interestingly enough, ministering is often accused of being sort of like, oh, it's programmy and it's fake. It's literally designed to make us more authentic. It's literally designed to stretch us and help us to be more loving and aware of the humanity of other people.
Yeah. And maybe somebody actually has to be invited into that and reminded of that. There for sure is a temptation to withdraw. I think that's maybe part of our makeup, to just like, to avoid uncomfortable, to avoid awkward, to just, to not engage, because engaging is risky, right? It's like, I feel like business transactions are really similar to like, relationship transactions, where it's just like, well, listen, I can eat the more I risk in business, the greater the reward could be. And I think that's the same with people,
right?
Also, and he actually talks about somewhere in here, I don't know, about this idea of offering invitations to people. Is that true? Is it in this talk or another one?
Yes, he does.
So many talks. I just don't know which ones and where.
Yeah,
but just talking about as a minister, one of the things you can do is invite people to, live in a different way or whatever. But I think in its essence, the idea of ministering is an invitation to me. It's God's invitation to me. Go take care of other people.
Yeah.
Right.
And part of taking care of people is sometimes direct invitations. But a lot of the world will tell you, oh, the way that you get someone to change is to directly invite them to be different. And of course, on some level, that has to happen. But the way that Jesus actually influenced change was a ministry model. You first come into someone's world. I mean, think about what Ammon did. Like he goes into the land of where the Lamanites, and he says, I just want to serve you. And then the text is very clear. It says, I want to show forth my power that I may win their hearts first. Second, that I may teach them. And so a Christian knows I've got to set a good example and in my love of God And then also I have to love these people in their full humanity. And then I can start being more direct with them, right?
Yeah.
And often we forget either parts of that formula. This is what Elder Gong says. He says, in some places in the church, we have a ministering gap. More say they are ministering than they say they are being ministered to. We do not want checklist concern, but often we need more than a sincere hello in the hall or a casual, can I help you in the parking lot? Now, I don't think this is naive. I want to say hopefully, maybe, perhaps it's just childlike faith, but I just really believe that God works through ministering assignments where we can really create miracles in people's lives, that we can really get to know families, serve them, help them. And as we go through that process, like God's hand is extended into the world and really blesses people.
And I want to just kind of address this because it's something that I feel, and it kind of like, it's a hurdle to me a little bit, that there is in my spirit this idea that if I've been assigned to take care of somebody, that like I almost don't want to do it because it feels insincere because of the assignment. And I don't think it's so much about me, but I actually like this. Let me see if I can get these words out right. I don't want them to think I'm being insincere because it was an assignment.
Right.
Like I can work through personally the idea that, okay, I was assigned this, and I can actually, because he says in here, he says, those who understand the true spirit of ministry and do more than before. And I was like, that's actually interesting. You would have to take time to settle into what's the true spirit of ministering, right? And so something that helps me is to think, kind of to play out in my mind and say, all right, imagine that I just kind of was starting up a church or something. And I said, hey, one of our pillars, one of our values as a church is going to be to take care of people. How do we do that in a way to make sure that nobody gets forgotten? Like we would make assignments out, right? And if I like zoom back, I was like, okay, assignments they're not a synonym to like insincerity. Right. And you were saying earlier when we were talking about this about like even a mission assignment, like right. Where it was like,
yeah, if I get assigned to go to a certain country, like Argentina or wherever, that doesn't mean I'm like incapable of loving those people, because my capacity to love someone is completely dependent on my ability just to be alive to their humanity, to see what they need and what would be helpful. And so, yeah, I could be assigned to do that. And assignments are actually what allow us to love more effectively.
Right.
Sometimes in our culture right now, people give organized religion a bad name, but being organized and being structured, if it's done correctly, is one of the most loving things you can do for someone.
Yeah.
I mean, think about when a hurricane hits and the church is ready to serve. It has food and water and volunteers. And that's because there's a structure and organization to it, right? And like that example about what if we just started a church and we wanted to minister to people? Tell us about that, what you were saying before about that.
Well, first I want to say that I actually had a friend who just has a home in the Caribbean, and a hurricane hit.
Wait, you have a friend who has a home in the Caribbean?
I'm sure you do too. You probably like just haven't asked everybody where all their homes are. Okay. But you're ruining the story. Sorry. You're the squirrel. So when they're
for a second, I'm sorry. I'm the squirrel.
You wanted me to introduce them to you. Like now I'm understanding the motive here. You're just like, I want a house in England, and I need a friend with a home in the Caribbean. Does anyone have a boat?
I confess my worldliness and repent before the
So a hurricane hit the island, and he was actually on it. And it like messed up a huge part of the island, not where he was at. And he was in contact with people from the humanitarian department of the church, and they were going to send like all of these supplies. And he just said, no, I'm on ground level right now. What we need is bottled water and corrugated sheet metal. That's what they need. And then he said, it was fascinating that within 12 hours, 2 747 jets landed full of corrugated sheet metal and bottled water. And I thought to myself, that's actually the beauty of organized religion. And because sometimes I will pay a fast offering and I think to myself, I wish I knew where this was going. I like a one-on-one, like I want to give $150 to a neighbor to buy Christmas presents, and I'm putting it off into this nameless and faceless fund, And then when I remember him telling me that story and thinking like, I can't do that by myself.
Right.
You can't do that by yourself, but together through an organized like assignment of that can happen. And you bring it down to like a neighborhood level. And I always, you talked about earlier, like, yeah, we minister to our families. When I was kind of in charge of making ministering assignments, one of the ways I kind of like worded it, for our group was, number one, we minister to those who live inside our homes. That's level number one.
Right.
Level number two, minister to the people to the right and to the left and across the street from you. Like those are people watch out for your neighbors and that's just logistically speaking, you see them more often. Number three, I'm going to give you an assignment so no one gets forgotten. Like I just want to make sure that everybody is remembered. And the only way I can do that to reach that intention, because I have that intention to do that. And I think that actually with appointments too. Remember, everyone used to always, this has been a while since anyone's made fun of this, but people used to make fun of like last day of the month kind of stuff or whatever. Like I got my like visit done last day of the month. And I actually used to love that because I was like, I'm such a distracted spirit that if I I say once a month I want to do this. I do that with the gym. Like I set an appointment and a time. And because if I just leave it to like whim, I actually will excuse my way all the way to next year. And so there was something about like, the deadline wasn't insincere. It actually like helped me do something I intended and wanted to do anyways.
Yeah.
So there was something about that was, I don't know, it's good. It's and you have to work through it. You got to you just have to say like, okay, listen, someone might initially think I'm being insincere because I have an assignment. Well, give me some time to prove my, sincerity there. That happened to me with a family once that I was given an assignment to, and they used to hide behind their couch. When I would come, they told me that. They were like, every time you would come up, we would hide, and eventually we had a conversation, and it was like, we realized like, hey, we're just kind of, that, sincerity was motivating everything. And it turned out to be just such a, like they became dear friends of mine. And I it's so enriching. You just have to kind of get over that initial like,
right. In connection with that, Elder Gong says this: we may tire physically, but in his service we do not weary in well-doing. We diligently do our best, do not run faster than we have strength, but trust, as the Apostle Paul teaches, that God loveth a cheerful giver. And so we're diligent. We keep going. We're not over the top, but it's that diligence and that consistency that creates sincerity. So consistency is what creates sincerity. At first, if you just show up at someone's house once or twice, they're going to be suspect. But when you stay with someone consistently over the years, I mean, I think about my parents are like fantastic examples of home teaching and ministering. My mom ministered to a woman who was blind and elderly. And my mom used to just go and sit there and just talk with this woman week after week after week. And you can't, I mean, after a while, sincerity shows like, my motives are good. I really do care about you.
Yeah.
And I think about my dad ministering to families like for like 20 years in Massachusetts. And those people are still close friends. And sincerity is consistency is what creates sincerity.
Yeah. And I actually do think that people ought to minister outside of assignment. Like I think you ought to have,
of course,
interruptions in your life. That you should go like midway through the day, you should have like a spontaneous, a compassionate detour is what I like to call them. When you watch like the way that, bless you, was that a sneeze?
It was a cough.
Okay, well, bless you anyways. But that a person ought to live with, with that eye and, watching for where can I help? Where can I lift? But then at the same time, why not also have like just to, hey, we're going to look after this particular person. Let's be deliberate about it. Let's like make plans for it. Let's just love in a really organized.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, like when Elder Gong started to speak about anyone, all those feelings kind of flare up, and I have to kind of like talk them down so that I can listen and think. And I did realize today, like I was listening to it this morning, and I realized, you know what? Part of my like I do have a sense of, I think my selfishness also like creeps up too, where it's just like, oh, don't take my time away. And I don't want to, that's also in there also. And I have to wrestle with that. But I think when you get to the heart and soul of this, it's beautiful. It's good. These words that he lists about Jesus, where he just says, because he's good, he can go about doing good. He blesses the one and the 99. He's ministering personified, where he just now gives words like, love your neighbor as I have loved you. Whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And rejoice with them that rejoice. Weep with them that weep. Watch over. Nourish people. Remember the poor and the needy. Like, man, I just like, that's the heart and soul of what it means to be a Christian. Like,
Yeah. This is one of my favorite parts about our faith tradition and how we try to embody Christianity, is that we take really seriously the idea we're going to share life together and we're going to help each other. I mean, from the days of the prophet Joseph, it was radical community. And we don't have a faith tradition where you go to church and you our faith is very horizontal in the sense that the way we often connect with God is by connecting and blessing other people. And I just think of the people who helped raise me, like the certain families in my home ward in Massachusetts, right? And like those people are inseparably connected to my very identity. I mean, this is connected also to the idea of the sealing power. We don't just seal families, but families that are sealed to families, and eventually the whole world will be this community centered in Christ Jesus.
Yeah. That whole concept of Zion, that's what Zion means.
Right.
The word gets lost because it's, I don't know, big and churchy and weird, but like the whole idea and intention of it was that, like we were talking earlier, that 3 Nephi 17 scene of Jesus, like, or I've got an appointment with the Father to keep, but then takes that compassionate detour.
Right.
And he's like, and then after they have an experience with him, he just says, will you go out and get other people? Actually, I don't even know if he asks them to go out and get it. They just do it. They're like, I want other people to like have this experience that this group had together. And I don't know, there's something really cool about, seeing that happen. I do this thing on my Instagram every week, Who Won Church, where I'm just like, it started with a friend of mine that we'd see each other every Monday. And I was like, who won church yesterday? I was like, what was the best line? Is what it meant. And 2 people said something that now this conversation has made me think of. One of them was, someone said their bishop stood up to announce that they were going to have a baby blessing in the ward. And then the bishop said this, and we're going to do it in front here with everybody as a reminder that we're all raising this baby together as a community. And like you watch like like a family and close friends gather closest, but then you also had like everybody there together. Like we are going to do this all together. And then this other lady who wrote in and said, I think she's the teacher in Relief Society, and her little boy or girl, I can't remember, has Down syndrome, and she takes him to class, doesn't do well in going to primary, I guess, or maybe too young. The context wasn't there, but just how she says, I love leaving church with that baby smelling like perfume, because he's just been passed around to the other women who held him, while she could share her gifts, and if we can get over that, whatever the awkwardness, the assignmentness of it, and really, like he says, capture that, the true spirit of what it is that we're actually talking about. Like, it's life. It's life. It's like Jesus's promise is real, where he just says, he's like, I'm going to show you a way to live life more abundantly. And it's going to, he gives that tree analogy right in the talk, where it's like, it takes grafting and pulling together and digging about and everything to help it come about. But
yeah,
beautiful.
Ministering is really training in Christianity 101. Like, it seems like so much of what we talk about in church is all designed to practice and go out and be a minister, whether it's our assigned ministering people or our own personal ministering assignments of people we get to know over the years and feel a prompting just to check on and to help and to bless.
Yeah. Oh, I'm being dead serious in saying that like 3 times throughout this talk, I was like, I have this neighbor and just, I got to be better at doing that. I like that little nudge, that little push to experience life, experience the beauty that can come from that. So anyways, it's a good one. All right. We'll see you next week.